Okay, Andy. Meg James is now going to take over from me. I'll just sort out with her that she's got enough privileges in the room and take it from there. Have an excellent presentation and good to see you.
Thank you. Good to be here. All right, well, welcome everybody. My name is Anthony Barrow. I'm a Jesuit and a Catholic priest and serve as Moodle's plugins facilitator as part of the sites team with Moodle HQ. Today's presentation is just kind of a basic introduction to add-ons. I'd be curious just to get a sense of your level of experience. If maybe in the chat you might let me know what version of Moodle you're using and maybe how long you've been using Moodle. And if you have any questions, feel free to type those into the chat at any time during the presentation, and I'll do my best to respond to those. I'm also a counselor. I did a master's in counseling at St. Louis University and had an opportunity to work with juvenile gangs, or teen gangs, while I was in Honduras, which was a very fascinating experience and taught me a lot. And enjoyed playing racquetball and watching Star Trek and things like that. So hence the Star Trek themed nature of the presentation. And so I mentioned some of these things just because sometimes I think that people have the idea that, well, to really get involved with Moodle, you have to be 100% tech and nothing else, and you have to know a lot of programming and things like that. And that's really not true. A few microphones here. You are now muted. And just to keep the background noise to a minimum, try to keep the microphones muted. And so anyways, I was saying you don't have to dedicate yourself completely to computer science or programming to be an active participant in Moodle. As an open source project, it encourages people to get involved on a variety of levels, from documentation to reporting bugs. And if you write code, that's great, but it's not necessarily a requirement. I got involved with Moodle back in 2005 when I was teaching in a Jesuit high school in Dallas, and was just looking for a way to take some of the interactions that I had in the classroom and move those and continue those online. And so I was basically just looking for forums, and I stumbled across Moodle, and I realized that there's this great tool that could do so much more. And so I was really impressed by Moodle, its functionality. And then as I started working with it, I like to tinker with things, and so I started looking into the code. And as I looked at the code, I said, well, this is actually very readable. And I sort of fell in love with the code. And again, wanting to kind of help fix little bugs and patch things up and test new features. When Martin asked me if I would kind of look over add-ons for plugins so that he could focus exclusively on core. And so I say that I developed a couple plugins. One's the birthday block, and one's was the MRBS block. And the reason I have developed there in quotation marks is because really I just took code that was already existing and adapted it, adapted it to Moodle. So the birthday block was just the online users block, and I just changed some of the functionality to get the users that have birthdays, and do that up there. And then MRBS is a meeting room booking system. And that was a separate PHP project, and I kind of adapted that code, and with the help of some others, pulled it in. And so one of the things, after I fell in love with the code, I really began working with folks in the community, and my work as the plugins facilitator really gives me a unique perspective on things that people are trying and working with different developers, and it's really great to work with them. I love seeing their ideas. I love the openness to feedback. And so I say that I fell in love with the code, but then after that I fell in love with the community. And so that's what's kept me involved all these many years. And so it's really more of a volunteer, fun project for me to do, more of a hobby than career type things. So just looking here, we've got folks that have been involved for 7, 6, 5 years. So folks have been around in the community for a while. So if you have questions, as I mentioned, feel free to kind of put those in the chat. Or if there's something in particular that you would like me to cover, go ahead and mention that, and I'll do my best to get to that. The objectives today are to recognize the difference between a plugin and an add-on. We're trying to be a little bit more consistent in our usage of the language there. To identify the various types of Moodle plugins and add-ons. To discover and assess a Moodle add-on that's been shared by others. To integrate add-ons into your Moodle installation. And support plugins for your site by actively participating in the Moodle community to kind of encourage each person to do what they do best. For some, that's going to be documentation or bug reports. For others, it'll be coding and collaborating with other folks on development of code. So, I do think that an open source project, it's great that folks can participate on any number of levels. So, as many of you probably know, since you've been around for a while and probably been to several moots, the M in Moodle stands for modular, and so it's designed to be expanded. We have the core product, and then there are all kinds of blocks and filters and different things that users can add in to make it work, as they need it to work. And so, the reason that we have add-ons is so that you can enhance the functionality of your site. Each of these add-ons function independently of each other and can be easily added or removed without impacting other parts of Moodle. I love and at the same time am a little fearful of folks that are running 1.9, and so, but I know that was certainly considered a great release, and a lot of the changes in 2.0 were tough for some folks, and so, but hopefully with the release of Moodle 2.7. Folks will be a long-term supported release. Folks will be encouraged, perhaps, to make that jump. So, what's the difference between a Moodle plugin and an add-on? Basically, add-ons are a subset of plugins. So, within Moodle, there are various activity modules, filters, and things that you can add in, file repositories. And so the ones that come in core, we refer to as plugins. The ones that you add onto your installation that are in the Moodle Plugins database, we prefer to refer to them as add-ons, just to make that clear that it's not in core. So if it's in core, generally we'll just refer to it as a plugin, and if it's not in core, something that's been shared from another user, a third party. So for example, we've got the turnitin.com submission type and plagiarism check and things like that. Those are add-ons. If there are any questions, again, at any time, feel free to type into the chat. Moodle has many types of plugins, and these have expanded somewhat in 2.7. And so back in 2.3, we rewrote the assignment module. And so the old one was mod assignment, and the current one is mod assign. And in 2.7, mod assignment is the code is taken out, and there's a bit of a stub in there, and so make sure to read those upgrade instructions if you're preparing to upgrade a site to 2.7, and you still have folks that are using the old mod assignment activity module. Make sure you kind of migrate those to mod assign. 2.7 will do its best to do that automatically, but it's good to read those instructions. And so what an assignment submission and feedback is different ways that people can submit an assignment. And so, whether it's a single file or multiple files, and feedback types are the way that the teacher then communicates back. And so one that I liked, and I'm not sure what the status of it is, if it was included in core or not, was the PDF assignment type that actually allowed a user, once a student uploaded a PDF file, then the teacher could then go in and grade that PDF, but they would be able to add annotations to it and things like that. And so that was really slick code that I think was slated for being incorporated in core, but I'm not sure if it's landed yet or not. Course formats allow you to kind of change the layout of the way that a course is displayed to folks. And so things like the grid course format. Themes obviously change the colors and layouts and general presentation. A lot of the themes that were previously in Moodle Core have been removed to make things more responsive, friendly, and adaptable to different screen sizes. And so now there's a clean theme that's intended to kind of serve as the primary base theme. And all of the other ones have been moved from Moodle Core into Moodle Plugins. And so if you were using something, say, like Formal White, and you want to continue to use that in Moodle 2.7, you'll need to download that from Moodle Plugins. And so Moodle also has activity modules. Activity modules are things like assignments and forums and ways of interacting and getting the students to share information with each other. And so things like the questionnaire activity module and feedback used to be an add-on in plugins, but then was pulled into core. And I think this is one of the exciting things for me is to see some code that really becomes popular and is useful, that Moodle HQ says, yes, we're willing to commit to this and to maintain it. And so they'll pull it in. And so one of the things, one of my hopes for plugins is that people will share their great ideas, and that this in fact makes Moodle better for everyone. I mentioned the repositories and portfolio types. One of the neat, for folks that are adding to Moodle plugins, one of the neat file repositories is GitHub. And so it'll allow you to attach to your GitHub account and pull in code. And if you're trying to upgrade or add a new version of your code, it'll take care of the packaging. It'll rename the root directory if you check the box to do so, and rename the README file if you prefer to use readme.md or something like that. And so it's just a really neat way of kind of pulling your code in from GitHub. But there are many different repository types. The idea is how can Moodle go out, find, and pull into itself files from different services and different places. Portfolios are about pushing information out. So like Mahara, being able to push information from Moodle out to another system. Blocks are just these nice little kind of blocks that you can add onto a course or onto your front page to present certain information to your users. They can be used in some rather creative ways, and so it's good to know what those are and check those out. There are different question types, formats, and behaviors, and so just ways of increasing what you can do with questions. There are different authentication types, and so if you have a server or another service at your institution that you use for authentication, there's a lot of different authentication types that you can use. There's a lot in core already, but if you need something developed, that you would use an authentication type to do that. Enrollment types are about how users get into courses, and so again, folks have come up with some different ways of doing that. Filters are really neat. I was seeing one recently that took some text and converted it into kind of a phonetic based font, and so it's really neat to me to see the different uses that people have for filters, of taking some text and kind of transforming that for people into something more useful or in a different format. So filters can be good. An example of the filters, like I think there's a bad word filter that would black out everything and, or any words that were listed as bad words. And so filters can be helpful. Another, I think, useful use for the filters was for glossary terms and automatically linking any time that a word that was in the glossary appeared, that a link to its definition would appear on a page. Well, anyway, just lots of neat things that people can do with filters. Grade reports, the grade book is a very complicated beast, and so people sometimes want to have those reports displayed in different ways, and so folks can write a grade report plugin to help meet the needs of their institution. Local plugins, also known as sort of general plugins, I think that are for the whole system, but don't really fit in any of the other categories. Message outputs are about ways that you want Moodle to be able to send notifications out. And so whether it's email or SMS or pop-up screens, or there are different ways of getting those messages out. Different reports for kind of looking at the data that Moodle has. I'm excited to see the expansion of logging in Moodle and being able to move that out into a separate database. And so I think we're going to start beginning to see a lot more done with reports and reporting and getting some good solid analytics about the way that people are using Moodle. And then administrative tools. Sometimes you have things that you want your admins to be able to do quickly and easily. And so there are admin tools that you can add in and user profile fields. There's also in Moodle 2.7 the ability to kind of say kind of conditions that you want before something is accessible or viewable. And so that's another plugin type. And so this is not meant to be a comprehensive list, but just kind of the major ones. I think I've was looking at trying to make some of the language consistent in the different parts of Moodle about how plugin categories or types are referred to. And I think there's like over 50 different Moodle plugin types. Plenty of tools here. So, what are the advantages of using an add-on? We work to make it easier for people to add add-ons to their site, and it's great because it does help to expand the functionality. And I always find it fun to play with the latest cutting-edge tools. But folks need to be aware that a lot of times folks that are submitting the code may not be working on it full time. It may be a hobby for them or a passion, and so they need to know that it's not maintained by Moodle HQ. A formal security evaluation has not been done. There may be some reliability or stability issues. It may open your site up to, if they've got, say a SQL injection vulnerability in their code, well, that might open up, your database to being hacked. And so, usability, it may not be as well documented. Accessibility may not be, compliant with some of those requirements. And as you upgrade, if it's not being actively maintained, then it may not be supported in future versions of Moodle. So we're trying to do a little bit to be able to take an add-on or a plugin that was being maintained by someone, that they move on to a different project, and they let us know that if they're not able to continue to do that. And so we're working on making it so that we can see, well, which ones are not maintained currently by anyone. And so if folks read that, a plugin that they're using is no longer being maintained, they can choose to either, step up and help maintain it, or possibly look for funding to get someone to maintain it. But long-term support may not be there for the plugins. But for the most part, my experience has been folks that kind of start a plugin usually stick around with it. So as long as they continue to be involved with Moodle. So how do you find these add-ons, and what can you do to see if there's something that you might be interested in for your site? And so if you go to moodle.org/plugins, you'll get a screen similar to what you see here with a list of categories. And so if you're looking for a block or you're looking for something related to Turnitin, or you've read about something on the forums, you can type in the search plugins box and then click on the search plugin, and it'll go out and find plugins that have those terms in this. So another way is to review the download statistics, and those are available at download.moodle.org/stats.php. Here. And so you can kind of see, well, what are the most popular plugins, that are available. I'm going to go ahead and type that here in the chat for folks, just in case they catch that. I say, what do you look for? How do you know if a plugin would be good for your site? And I say, well, is there a need for it? Functional necessity. You see where having that particular function on your site is going to help your users. And I encourage, because add-ons are not reviewed thoroughly, I give them a quick look and just make sure that there's nothing obviously bad in the code, and that it seems to follow the Moodle coding guidelines, and I've been trying to do that more consistently, is to run the code checker and report those results in the comments, just as one metric for folks to see that the initial version submitted, kind of where it was with the number of warnings and errors on that. But you know, I certainly encourage folks to download on a test server any add-ons that they want to use, and kind of play with it a little bit, and get involved and give feedback to the maintainer or the author of the code. Let them know what works for you, what doesn't. Much better for you to do that on a local test server than on your production server. And so from the stats page, you see how many plugins and the name of the plugin were downloaded. And so another thing I look for is, do you recognize the name of the maintainer of the project? Is it someone that's been around Moodle.org for a while, like many of you, 5+ years? It's probably a good indication that they have a good idea of what they're doing. Reviews, if you're interested in reviewing plugins, please send me an email and let me know that. We're looking for more people to give trusted reviews of plugins where they can, install it and test it, and just let the community know, how good or bad their experience is, and how it describes the functionality and what works well and doesn't work well, and strengths and weaknesses. And so we're looking to get people more involved in reviewing these plugins and writing up a review on them. Also looking at awards to add-ons that are worthy of, some special recognition, that provide some really neat functionality or connection to a service that's popular. And so we're looking at different awards. I'd be interested in hearing any ideas people have on what awards that they would be looking for, and kind of what review criteria they might find helpful to know about an add-on, and see if we can encourage getting that information out to you. I think if you review the comments, that can also give you an indication if people are saying, this is really buggy, this is, destroying my database. Well, then, obviously you may want to stay away from that. So I think comments on a plugin are a good place to kind of look, and it also gives you an indication, does the maintainer respond to questions and comments that people are having. That said, I do like to make a distinction between comments and tracker issues. So comments are not the place to necessarily report a bug. It's really comments about the add-on overall. Other positive indicators and things that I strongly encourage folks to add are screenshots. That way you can get an idea of what it looks like without actually installing it. Documentation links. Have they taken the time to document it, or has someone helped them to document that? If you see a plugin or an add-on that you like, and it doesn't have documentation, and you're particularly good at writing documentation, or just interested in having some documentation, even if you're not particularly good, others can fix it up. Discussion, are they discussing it on the forums? What are people saying about it? Check out their bug tracker. A lot of people are using GitHub's issues system to manage bugs, but they're also still welcome to have a component created on the Moodle Tracker and use that as well. And so check out and see the number of outstanding or open issues that there are. And it might be nice if we, just an idea myself here, if we had some statistics there, like number of open issues right there by the useful links, to kind of try to figure out which system they're using for tracking bugs and possibly get some statistics there for people. And I try to encourage them to share where they're hosting the code so that people can contribute patches and things like that. So if they don't have these things, it doesn't mean that it's a bad add-on or plugin. To me, it just means that one of the main avenues of communication between the user of the code and the developer of the code has been kind of left out. And so I really do encourage folks that are sharing code to make sure they provide that information. Prior to Moodle 2.4 or 2.4 and prior, add an add-on to your site, you had to download the zip file, have server access, go in, install it in its proper location, depending on the type of plugin that it was, and then go through the installation routine, or use Git. With 2.5 and beyond, you can now install an add-on from within Moodle. So if you go to your site administration block, the plugins, install add-ons, you'll get this page here, and it has a button here that install add-on from the Moodle Plugins directory. And then you click on that, and it will take you to the Moodle Plugins directory. Now, this is an important first step. Because at that point, your Moodle server will let Moodle.org know, and you have to have a Moodle.org account, that your site then is willing to pull in information. And so an entry is added on Moodle.org that you have a site with version 2.5 or beyond. And you'll only see the button to install an add-on if a version is available for the version of Moodle that you have. And so you can't accidentally install a 2.7, something that's intended solely for 2.7 onto a 2.5 server. And so that's a feature. There has been some talk about possibly working around it, but there is the download option as well. You can simply download the file once you get there if you wanted to try something on a version of Moodle for which a plugin is not necessarily intended. So then once you click on that, it'll bring you to the Moodle Plugins directory and allow you to browse around and find the plugin that you're looking for. And then if there is a version available for the version of Moodle that you have on your site, so it'll give you an option then to install or download. If you click install, it will then take you back to your site and tell you that you're preparing to install a Moodle add-on. So it's going to try to download the zip file and validate it. It does not get installed at that point, so you can continue. And then it'll make sure that there are certain things present in that zip file, basically just reassuring and making sure that it does look like a valid Moodle plugin. And then it'll install the code and ask you if you want to upgrade the Moodle database. Now, you're presuming that folks know that before you make any changes, any add-ons to Moodle, that you've backed up your database in case something goes wrong. And so that's recommended practice. And so you go ahead and click Upgrade Moodle Database Now, and then it'll finish that process of installing the plugin and let you know that this block or this theme or whatever it is that you were installing was successfully installed. After that, if there are any settings for the plugin, it will give you an opportunity to modify those from their default settings and then save the changes. As I mentioned, if you prefer to upload a zip file, you're able to do that. It's also able to be done from within the Moodle interface. And then it'll go through a very similar procedure. You can delete plugins by going under plugins and looking at the installed plugins that are there and filtering for the add-ons only. And initially, it was themes would get removed automatically from the server itself. Most of the plugins now, if you go in and delete it, it'll remove the data and then remove the code from the server. But occasionally you may stumble across a plugin type for which that might not be happening. So you do want to make sure that that code is deleted from your server. But most of the plugins now are removing the code. And so I explained that in there. There was really more of an issue with older versions of Moodle, but now we're doing a better job of making sure that that code gets removed from the server. And so I mentioned there are many different ways for people to participate in the community. Moodle Tracker is for people who like to complain that you can create issues about problems that you're having with code, errors that you're running into, feature requests. It's a great way to interact with developers. And so learning how to use the Moodle Tracker, I think, is a great way for people to kind of say, here are some problems that I've been having. Here's a new feature that I want. And then people can vote on those and submit patches and different things. And so even if a patch is only a proof of concept and not completely refined, that can be very helpful for the developers, especially on the front-end team, back-end team, to let them know, like, oh, okay, here's kind of what they're thinking. So it can help make that clear. Okay. Moodle Docs, like I said, some people are really good at documentation, and so Moodle Docs is a wiki that anybody can go in and create pages on and edit and talk and make comments on things, and so it's always helpful to make the documentation as good as we can. And so if you find errors there or try to follow something and it doesn't make sense, feel free to improve the Moodle documentation. Moodle forums, discussing Moodle and different things that you use it for, getting advice for best practices. The community, the Moodle forums, there's over 1 million people on them, and so it's really rare that you'll come across an issue that somebody else hasn't, and so I think that's a great place to get in touch with other folks who are using it, and you can find folks maybe in your area. You can find folks that if you use the tags that like Guinness beer, and so you can have a drink fest around Moodle at a local pub or something. So Anyway, there's lots of ways to use the forums in the Moodle.org site to really increase this community of learners, and in particular learners about Moodle and how best to use it. Some people are really good with translations. There are still some languages for which there aren't, there's not 100% of language strings translated, and so, I would encourage folks that know a language, especially if it's a language that's one of the really common languages like Spanish or French, German, and apologies to any common language that I'm leaving out that any of you may speak. But certainly get involved and consider helping to translate some of those language strings to AMIS, which is our kind of database that maintains the different translations. I know one of the exciting things for me when I wrote the birthday block was, I think it was about a week went by, and I had already received from other folks a couple of translations, and I thought that that was really great that folks were interested in using the code in a different country, and so yeah, definitely consider helping if you know a different language. So inexperience is no excuse. Moodle Plugins continues to evolve. We're constantly trying to improve it. David Moodrak has taken over as recently as the plugins liaison, and will be trying to continue to improve the plugins system. We moved a long time ago from CVS to Git, and so I encourage folks to use GitHub and to be familiar with Git. But the goal here is not to be in any way restrictive or limiting. And so if folks are using Material or some other site to host their code, that's perfectly fine. And even if they don't have a place where they're hosting their code and they just maintain it on their servers, that's okay. I'll just kind of ask them, is there a URL? And if there's not, then they can let me know that, and that's okay. So the idea is to be as flexible as possible, but really to enable folks. And one of the things that I've always seen people that write plugins doing is learning how to write Moodle code, and so that they can become more active throughout the community. And so I want there to be consistency between the way that Moodle HQ is developing code and writing code in the way that add-ons are being written and maintained. And so that's why I've tried to encourage using some of the same tools, and we'll understand each other. I think community participation is crucial, and one of my roles is trying to help people find their particular niche within the community. And so anything that I can do to be helpful there, please let me know. And if you have ideas of how Moodle plugins can better serve you or the community, just let me know. I put my email address there, anthony@moodle.org. I'm always happy to respond to questions that people have. And so add-ons are good. I think that they will help enhance people's usage of their sites and open the floor up to any questions. Comments. Let's see if I can get some of the statistics on Moodle on kind of what the more common add-ons are currently, the ones that have gotten the most attention, and see if I might speak about them a little bit. I often get asked, well, what plugins do I need? Yeah, there's not a definite answer. I think it's really about asking your users what tools are they using, and kind of searching and seeing, so like Etherpad for collaborative writing. There's currently a couple of plugins for that one I'm reviewing and one that's been approved. And just a note about that, whenever that happens, one of the things I try to look for is, is the plugin basically a duplicate? And so, and if it is, can I encourage those developers to work together rather than having two pieces of very similar code? Because I think we've seen with things like feedback and questionnaire that while there's very similar functionality, even though the names are separate, sometimes there tends to be confusion in the community. And so when I review a plugin, it's something that I try to check out and make sure that it's not duplicated. And if it is, to encourage collaboration there. But yeah. Any other questions? So looking at the statistics, I'm seeing that the active forums block is pretty popular. The unique login, the Plagiarism Checker was one that was popular. I like the game activity module for kind of gamification. I think that had things like crossword puzzles and different things. The certificate module is pretty popular. And so those are, I think, some of the more popular ones there. I would agree with you that there's not a definite answer. You just have to ask your users and kind of be in touch with what tools they're using, and have a test server that you can kind of play with things and see. And I like to encourage, a group of teachers to sort of function as a testing panel. The ones that are really more interested in trying to push the envelope a little bit and let them play with some new features on the test server and see how they work out. So, any other questions? Where are folks from? Any sense of where my audience is? Oregon. Okay. I'm moving to Portland, Oregon in September. So I'm looking forward to that. Enjoyed being at the Moodle Moot in Sydney. Lived and worked in Texas, both in Dallas and Houston. Not been to British Columbia. One of my little side projects is the Jesuit Virtual Learning Academy, which is run out of Omaha, Nebraska. North Dakota, I know that we have, the Jesuits have an Indian reservation in North Dakota, Pine Ridge, and I've not had a chance to get out there yet. And let's see, Pennsylvania, I've not been to, although my mother is from Pennsylvania. My dad's from New Jersey. And yes, I'm definitely happy to visit any pub with just about anybody. The darker the better is usually my preference. I had a great time recently, or it was last year, at the Mountain Moot in Helena, Montana, and so for a small town, they had a number of microbreweries, and so here in Albuquerque, within walking distance, we have Marble Brewery, which I don't know if there are any Breaking Bad fans among us. Maybe I could do a Breaking Bad presentation or a themed presentation at some point. But Marble Brewery created Walter's White Lie, and I forget what their dark one. I think it was Heisenberg Dark with their dark beer. So yes, those are all good things to enjoy. Okay. No, I'm not able to make it to the Mountain Moot this year. I was very disappointed that I wouldn't be able to, but my duties here at the church, the pastor will be away at that time, and so we weren't able to both be away at the same time. And so, but hopefully Dan will continue to invite me, and maybe we might be able to look out some type of virtual presentation or something. But I have a feeling that the beer from the breweries will not quite get here through the internet. So that's really a downside for me. Yeah, you know, Helena, the Mountain Moot was really a fantastic experience. Um, one of the well, a couple of the fun things that happened were we climbed Mount Helena, and we got to the top and realized that we had a Muslim, a Catholic, Mennonite, and a former Mormon on the top there. So certainly a diverse group. And so then we came back down and we went to the one of their microbreweries to their tap room. And after that, for dinner, we went to a place that the locals call the brothel. And so I got a real chuckle out of them taking the priest to the brothel. And so it got a lot of attention when I came home and told people that I was at the brothel while I was in Montana. I think I did get a pic. I'm pretty sure I got a few pictures from Montana. It was a great time. Any other plugin related questions? Anything that you would like to see with add-ons or Moodle plugins, features? How can we make it better or easier? You know, I think really the hardest thing is just ensuring the integrity of the code. And so I would love to see things like Moodle partners get involved and perhaps have an award if someone has paid to have that that code reviewed. You know, one of the things is that when it's reviewed, a particular version is reviewed, and so if the maintainer uploads a new version, you know, with changes, then it would need to be kind of re-examined again. I'm not sure how, you know, we could, you know, maybe if there are trivial changes, how we might handle that a little bit better. But that's one area that I'd like to see things that, you know, people would know, like this has gone through a reasonably extensive review of the code, and it's safe for a production environment and things like that. So, or at least as safe as we can tell. So, like I said, I do my best to take a quick look at the code, but I'm really just perusing it, scanning it to make sure that there's nothing obviously harmful in there. So, the most common things I find in reviewing plugins, how many of you write plugins or have contributed? I'm trying to see if I recognize any of your names as contributors of plugins. And so, the most common issue I find is not providing the link to the source code. Settings, I like to make sure that if it's an add-on, that your settings, that data is being stored in config plugins, I think it is the name of the table, and not just a config table, just to avoid the global CFG variable from excessive bloat. And so I do try to make sure that folks are using that table correctly. And so, but basically it's just not providing the information. I'll try to install the code and test it out, but a lot of times if it involves a third-party site or subscription to a service or something, like turn it in, then I wouldn't be able to do that. But as much as possible, I try to test the code and make sure that it functions well without throwing too many errors. And I keep debugging to show all errors, so any notices or warnings that pop up, I'll see those. Okay. Maybe folks could share your favorite add-on with other folks, or add-ons that you've installed on your sites or have considered for your sites. The one that I encourage if you're doing development is the code checker that was contributed by Tim Hunt. That will go through and look at your code and make sure that you don't have bad white space or things done in a non-Moodle way. So I'd like to encourage folks to use that. So we're coming up on an hour. Don't want to go too much beyond that, but I'm happy to stick around for a few minutes. And you are now unmuted. Folks,
I'm just going to. Sorry, I'm just going to jump in here to Maggie from the iMoot team just to say a big thank you for your presentation. I know as someone who deals with clients, often starting off with Moodle, like I said, my biggest question is, well, what do I need? Why isn't it there? Why isn't it part of the code? So it's good to have a reference list now. I think I'm going to add this to my list of things to say, well, here's a checklist, go through it and come back to us with what you think you need. So it's often a very scary area, I think, plugins and add-ons for newbies to Moodle. But thank you very much. Much appreciated.